there possibly was a trust injury. The wounded party is trying to keep themselves and the relationship safe because we always want to avoid pain.
That's right.
Okay, so in the effort to avoid pain, I try to prevent the thing that caused me pain.
Right.
Okay, so I'm now setting up boundaries. But what I think people slide into is when they're setting up those boundaries, now they're becoming controlling.
Yeah.
And so to me, I find like here's this critical part where somebody is negotiating a change or a needed change because something happened, and yet the way the change is being negotiated is just falling flat.
Right.
So and I'm kind of thinking that when I'm setting a boundary on you and I'm saying you can't do this anymore,
Right.
I mean, of course, we don't want to go off the deep end into the really deep stuff, but this clearly, it involves those deeper issues. I need you to block this person on Facebook, and so.
Right.
But I begin to tell you what to do. That really, I think the other person just naturally becomes defensive, and I would almost use the word rebellious because those kind of boundaries almost feel parenting.
Yes.
And once the other person is then resisting, that doesn't build my trust. When I am trying to protect us and the relationship and you're saying no,
Right.
man, we're just off on the wrong foot.
Right.
So
one of the biggest gifts you can give to yourself is to know your own, to know your own boundaries. What are you comfortable with? What are you not comfortable with? And then secondly is to be able to clearly communicate that in the relationship. And then it's asked, well, how do you feel about that? And what do you want? So you invite the conversation, right? And then even if you're on different pages, okay, and see it differently, which often we do, but it's like, now what are we going to do about it?
Yeah.
What is the boundary for we? And sometimes it'll fall to the more conservative boundary for the time being. Other time until trust is built a little more, but then other times it won't. It won't, and you find some sort of a medium, right? But the thing is make sure you know the boundary, and if you don't know it, ask first. Get clarity first in the relationship. Like, yeah. No. I'm sure I have an example, but it's not coming yet.
It will. But I love that. So I have to become clear. So it's an internal clarity around, I'm not, that's not good for me. But realizing that may not be shared by your partner.
Right.
And that's one of the scariest things is, the reality is we actually don't see things the same way.
That's right.
What do we do about that?
Right.
Is this normal?
Absolutely. You were raised in your family. I was raised in mine. They're totally different.
Yep.
And our boundaries and so much of our personality, our view of the world and everything, which we were raised very, very similarly. Our parents are both still married. We come from long, all of those kinds of things, very similar veins of faith, similar moral structure, guidelines, all those kinds of things. But we are very, very different. And without the conversation around what we're good with, we could blow up our marriage too.
Yeah. So to me, different is not right or wrong.
No.
It's just different.
Yes.
But one of the keys is to be sensitive to what you're experiencing. So if I'm not leaning in to hear your heart, I think that's one of those, it causes a trust breach, right? Because trust to me is that I know you have my back.
Right.
Like I know you do. I know you're looking out for me and you're looking out for us.
That's right.
And so I guess to me, the way boundaries should go down, if you're thinking about we need to make a change in the boundaries, because the reality is at different times, different things.
Like the birth of a baby.
Yeah.
Might definitely change some boundaries and some structure. Or would cause a lot of hurt feelings, unseen feeling, all of that kind of stuff. But that to me is a life transition that does upset the boundaries.
Yep. But I think just life transitions in general, because when we start off in our ideal marriage, we have these boundaries we've drawn together, hopefully. But then as life goes on, I think the relationship doesn't just stay stagnant, and those things need to be readdressed. But the key is you don't want to get into this place where you're trying to get the other person to do something. You can't do this anymore, or you should. It's more about, no, I can't. I'm not okay with this. This is not ultimatums, but I'm not okay. And then it's inviting the other person into that conversation. But ultimately, it's if one person has injured the trust, okay, they've done something that the other feels has hurt the relationship. We want the person who's done the injuring to be the one focused on protecting the relationship.
Right.
That makes me feel a lot safer when I think the other person is setting the boundaries on themselves.
Right.
So I'm more apt to do something I say I'm going to do rather than do something you say I need to do.
Right. Right. And I think some of the ways where boundary adjustments for us have really worked is using terms like you've used to me. I feel uncomfortable when, and I'm like, man, I don't want you to feel uncomfortable. and then there may be a perspective, like this is my perspective, this is your perspective, and then it's like, okay, well, I get that. Would this be suitable, or instead of the never again? So a lot of times I'm coming up with the idea and asking and say, would that still keep your boundary?
Right.
So if there's an uncomfortability, I know there's a boundary. Okay, I hear that. I want to honor that. Is this acceptable, or does it need to be absence of? And then that's kind of the working together.
I was thinking of a funny story. So recently, you mentioned, you said this. You said, I think Sam's using more product than I am.
Yes.
And I was like,
I actually don't think I said I think.
Yeah.
I just said it matter of fact.
And like I felt like my manhood took a
Lost your man card.
Right. And so immediately it stung because I felt like, oh man, people are gonna they're gonna see me as some way, and I didn't want that to ever happen again. And so I had to share, hey, this is an area where, no, I mean, the reality is I can go with or without product. I use product to make myself more pleasing to other people. Smell better, look better.
I didn't like the without product.
Without product, right.
So then he said, I need you not to say that again.
Right, because it motivates me to go into backpacking mode. Man, I can go 9 days, no shower, not a problem. But when it seems like I'm being, So the idea though is what I want is you to never do that again. But the reality is that all I can do is let you see into me about whatever it hit a little insecurity or touched a button with me. This isn't right or wrong. It's about this is what happened, and so I need to communicate, because if you don't know that that's an internal boundary, we can have all kinds of fights or disagreements over things that are like unspoken.
Yes.
They're like hidden minds. So
for sure.
All right. Well, speaking of boundaries, we have to bring
this to a close.
Our first video back. But anyway, hope you enjoyed it. We'll do a lot more of these. Take care.
Bye.